Sergio Larrain was born in Santiago, Chile in 1931. In 1958, he won a British Council grant to photograph British cities. What resulted was a powerful image of the national capital. London 1959, published by Thames Hudson in 2021, features a selection of this work. Larrain arrived in the winter of 1958 to a London obscured by fog. It persisted into a cold, dry New Year. It would have been a world away from Santiago, but it was the ideal backdrop to the more ethereal photography that Larrain became famous for. In this image, for example, a ghost-like figure moves through a London park. The softly focused silhouette of a traffic warden is set against the dimmed lights of Piccadilly. And a lone phantom-like figure stands on one of the lions at the base of Nelson's column. It turned reality into an unreality. He experimented in other ways too. This reflection of passers-by in a window is almost abstract and reminiscent of this by Sol Leiter. This use of foreground to frame an image is also similar to some of Leiter's work. This was a formative period for street photography, and the images in this book are a significant contribution. They are also interesting thematically as much as technically. I recently reviewed Chris Killip, which features images from the industrial northeast in the 1970s. Both Larrain and Killip capture a world that is on the cusp of profound change. Larrain remarked that he could feel the capital of a huge and ancient colonial empire coming to an end and the melancholy and the darkness that followed. This sense is captured by the greyness of the fog and the ethereal outlines of the capital's architecture. Here, the crew of a tugboat observed Tower Bridge emerging from the fog, contrasted by the more sharply focused foreground. It is strikingly similar to this image by Chris Killip of a coal mine at Castleford in Wakefield. The images of people in the book illustrate the more defined social order of the immediate post-war period. In the 1950s, it's still possible to tell which class people belong to by the clothing they're wearing. Larrain's images of the City of London capture the last of the gentlemanly capitalists. Here, a bowler-hatted man walks by with a furled umbrella and a copy of the Financial Times. And in this image, the top hat denotes that the subject may have worked for the stock exchange. They're contrasted with this image of market traders at Covent Garden. Flat caps and overcoats are reminiscent of Killip's images of shipyard workers on the Tyne. There are hints that this social order is starting to break down. A woman having a cigarette break looks curiously at the subject walking past, suggesting that the bowler hat has already become a bit idiosyncratic. There is perhaps a hint of distrust in her expression, foretelling the decline in deference in the 1960s. There is a note of satire too in the way this top-hatted gentleman is framed, and in the clear implication here of an Edwardian society on its way out. The final images in the book foretell the artistic and sexual liberation of the 1960s. Their inclusion is similar to the inclusion of images by Killip taken at a punk concert at The Station, a music venue in Gateshead. In a book that mostly illustrates the continuity of industrial communities, this is strikingly new. The book brings into focus the idea of change. Larrain experiments with light and composition to depict a changing society. Like Killip, he shows an Edwardian society fading into the past and a new one emerging. They both capture a country caught somewhere between Algar and punk.